Halloween Ends was released on October 14th, 2022, from director David Gordon Green and starring Jamie Lee Curtis, and it is the final installment of the recent Halloween trilogy that started back in 2018. Now, I'm a huge Halloween fan, and I have been very excited to see how this new trilogy was going to end. But while I loved Halloween 2018, I wasn't super thrilled with Halloween Kills. So going into Halloween Ends, I really wasn't sure what I would think. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over my first thoughts on Halloween Ends.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another, I mean the 117th. Now, before we get into my first thoughts, I wanted to give a couple of disclaimers up front. This is just a first thoughts video, and as I'm sure many regular viewers are aware because I've been making so many of them recently, this is not a strict review. I did not script out my thoughts, and I'm not trying to make any declarative statements in this video. The point of my first thoughts videos is to get my thoughts on a piece of media out there as soon as possible. While I did have some notes while I was recording, I didn't script out this video. I essentially watched the movie and then sat down and recorded it. So just keep that in mind if I get any details about the movie wrong, or if I change my opinion on the film in the future. And one other thing I wanted to mention was that I'll be using my footage from my most recent Resident Evil Village gameplay, because I'm always afraid to show footage of movies that I review on this channel because of the way that YouTube has responded to my movie reviews in the past. Anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into my first thoughts on Halloween Ends. So, let's get into the verdict first. What did I think of Halloween Ends? Well, I liked it. In fact, you could say I loved it. And if you said that, you'd be way more accurate, because I did love it. Which is pretty crazy to me, because I got two of my favorite horror franchises, Hellraiser and Halloween, in the same month. We got, two new movies from those series. And, they're both franchises that I love, but that have a long history of not having the best sequels, honestly. And I just feel very happy that we were able to get two movies that I genuinely really liked. The only difference is that with one movie, Hellraiser, it seems it's getting a lot of critical praise, which is really awesome to see, especially since, the original Hellraiser didn't as much. A lot of people didn't like it. And then Halloween Ends seemed to be getting a lot of critical panning from people. A lot of negative reviews for Halloween Ends, and that's been very interesting to see. And I'll talk about that in a second, but I just gotta say, I loved the movie, and I wasn't expecting to love the movie. I didn't really like Halloween Kills. I did my Halloween tier list video recently, and I updated my opinion on Halloween Kills. When I first watched Halloween Kills, I hated it, and I even went as far as to say that it might have been one of the worst horror movies I'd ever seen. And now watching it, I've watched it again since that tier list video, so that's two additional times. I think that's super exaggerated of me to say. I don't know why I exaggerated so much, but I still don't think it's a great movie. I thought it was very dull. There's stuff that I like about it, but I definitely don't think it's the worst movie ever made, and I was surprised that I was that, over the top about it. So, I'm not just like, oh, I'll just watch a Halloween movie and be pleased with it. I wasn't into Halloween Kills, and yet this movie I really, really loved. And so talking about why people dislike it, I totally understand why people don't like the movie. I think it did something very different. I think it was going for something very different. And that's part of what I like it, why I like it. But I also understand, with that risk and doing something different, I know that a lot of people are going to dislike it for that. And that's the risk you take. And I think one of the big reasons why people don't like it, other than them doing something new and doing something different, is also just simply the screen time for Michael. I don't think. Well, okay, wait. Let me put this out there. I'm going to do a spoiler section. I think we're not going to get into spoilers yet. I hope it's not a spoiler, though, for me to say that Michael's in the movie. Obviously, it's a Michael Myers film. It's his end. It's whatever. But I would say that that's one of people's big problems with the movie, is that his amount of screen time while he's in the film is something that frustrates a lot of people. And I understand, as a movie that's, marketed as like the end of Michael Myers, and as this movie, as a Michael Myers film, people want to see Michael. And again, he's in the movie and he does Michael Myers things, but I think people are upset with how much Michael Myers they get. And I don't want to get into the specifics of that, but I think that's the general idea. For me personally, as a fan of Michael Myers, as a fan of Michael, and as a fan of Halloween, um, I also wish there was more Michael in this movie, and I think that's personally what'll prevent this from being like one of the best movies in this series for me personally. Um, is that there wasn't a ton of Michael, and that is something that factors in for me. Again, maybe it's not determining the quality of the movie. Like, I'm not saying that makes it a good or a bad movie, but for me and my preferences, I want to see Michael Myers. I want to see this character more. And I just don't feel like we saw him as much as we could have in this movie. And as a result, even though I think it's a great movie and even though I loved it, it is lower on my list. But I still think it's a fantastic film. I still think it's a really good film. Something cool about Halloween Ends is that I think it tries to tell a subtextual story, and tries to tell an allegorical story. Um, and I like the tools it uses to do that, and I like the story it tries to tell. It's very interesting talking about this trilogy, and I don't know if we call this a trilogy, but I'm accepting it. You know what I mean? I'm calling it a trilogy because Jurassic World is its own trilogy, even though there was already a trilogy before it. And this, I guess, is also a trilogy, even though technically there's one other movie, which is it's Halloween 1978, and then you watch these three films. So it's always been weird to call these movies a trilogy for me. And there's even a box set coming out that's going to be these three movies, and I'm like, but what about the first one? Like, it is canon. But anyway, that's beyond the point. This trilogy is interesting to me because I think the first one, 2018, Halloween 2018, I don't think it I could be wrong, but like from my watching of it, and I watched it recently and rewatched it recently, it doesn't feel very allegorical. It doesn't feel like there are a ton of subtextual themes. But it did feel like it was trying to take a more highbrow, approach to Michael Myers and Halloween, if that makes sense. It felt like they were trying to add some class to the franchise, and I'm not saying that the franchise lacked class because again, I love the rest of the franchise, but that's what I got the feeling of, is that 2018 was trying to follow through on the brutality of what people love about Halloween and Michael Myers, but it was also trying to bring some class to it. And then Halloween Kills, interestingly, lacks that. I feel like Halloween Kills lacks so much class. I feel like it's very over the top. It's very violent. It's very it can be very silly. It feels like an older Halloween sequel. But then what's interesting is at the same time, it does also feel allegorical, and it feels like it's trying to tell a subtextual story. That was one of my cons for the movie because I felt like it was very heavy-handed. I felt like they did not do a great job. Even though they were trying to tell a meta story, I just didn't think that they did it the best. This whole like mob mentality, this whole Evil Dies Tonight, all of that, I felt like they were clearly trying to tell a story beyond Michael, and I just didn't think they did it super well, even though it was kind of an interesting idea they were tackling. And then now we got Halloween Ends, and it's also telling a meta story, but I think it brings the class back of Halloween 2018. And so as a trilogy, I think it's just very interesting. What makes Kills so different, in my opinion? I don't know. What made it so different? If you agree with me that like it lacks this kind of class and it plays with the meta themes where the first one doesn't, like what's the difference there? I don't know. I just find that really interesting. Anyway, the subtext of this movie, again, trying to be as general as possible. There is, I don't know how much can I talk about. There's this subtext about evil in Halloween Ends. And again, they talk about evil, but I really like that. And to me, that carries on the idea from the original. Going from Halloween 1978 to this film, Halloween Ends, even though Michael Myers, I don't know, actually, now that I think about it, comparing it to the original, like, how much screen time does he get? I don't know. But, even if he's seen less in Halloween Ends, it's carrying on that idea of evil from the original that I don't think that they've done in a lot of the other sequels for a while. In the as much as an icon as Michael has become in that original movie, it wasn't really about Michael. It was about this embodiment of evil. That's always what Loomis was talking about, is he is a vessel for evil, and how messed up, we know that, bad people come from trauma, and that, they're not just born, but what if this person was just unrelenting evil? And I feel like that this movie continues that question, and then it also asks further questions, like, again, I don't want to get too much into it, but I feel like there are characters in this movie, and like the opening of this movie asks questions like, how much did you know about Michael Myers? And even though he appeared to just be unrelenting evil, what if there was more to his story that you just didn't look into? And because of the way he was treated, he became evil. And then what is it like for him to exist and others to see what he does? And, can that evil be passed on? And, all those ideas I thought were really interesting. And, I don't know. I like that, and I like that it gives me something to think about and something to talk about. And in that regard, I feel like it does do a good job as a Halloween sequel, carrying on this legacy of evil and trying to have a conversation about evil, because more so than Michael Myers, that's what it is. Michael Myers was a conduit for evil. He was a vessel for evil. He represented evil, and that's what this movie really wanted to talk about. And I liked that. I thought that was cool, and I thought it was good as a final chapter in the franchise, whether it's a final chapter or not, because these are franchise films. We'll get more and more. I'm hearing rumors already about a 2024 film, but whether it's a final chapter or not, that it makes sense, in my opinion, to be like, this is what the last movie is about. And the other thing about like making this the final chapter, and having less Michael and doing something super different, for me, again, even though I love Michael and even though I wanted to see more Michael, I feel like I would be more upset with that if this wasn't the 13th movie in the franchise. But because it's been 13 films, I do like seeing something so drastically different. And it is refreshing. Again, after watching 12 Halloween films in a row, with so many of them sharing a lot of the same ideas and structures, I like that this new movie tries to do something different. I genuinely appreciate that, and I appreciate it more, again, because it's one of so many. I was way more open to seeing that. Talking about Halloween Kills again, there are some things that I kind of left like scratching my head. Talking about the evil stuff. So wait, okay, let's go back to 2018. 2018 kind of resets the clock. It says it takes place right after 1978. It takes away, it retcons all the other sequels. So no related, Jamie Lee Curtis or sorry, Laurie Strode to Michael Myers. And also you remove the body count. So he really only killed like 4 people that first night. The 3 babysitters in the original film. Well, no, there's some other people as well, but maybe they couldn't link the murders back. And then there's a police officer in Halloween Kills that they retcon that he killed as well. But in Halloween Kills, they're like, okay, and then let's give him a giant body count again. You know what I mean? I guess they wanted him to, have a huge body count all over again. And so he kills, like, I think the most people he kills in the entire franchise. But they also add a lot of they flesh out a lot of details about the story and the night he came back and all of that. And one of the biggest details, I mean, spoilers for Halloween Kills, but one of the biggest details is the window. And from the first moments of Halloween Kills, they're like, oh, he keeps looking through that window, and what's he looking at? And that was one of the details that when I first watched it, I was like, okay. And then when I rewatched it, I kind of liked it more. I liked this kind of, mysterious, like, I don't know, tug, this mysterious pull for Michael to come back home, to just look out this window. I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of hinted to the magic, past of Michael, maybe like the Thorn cult or whatever, without being like overtly like this is magic. It's just like, why does he keep looking out that window? That's so bizarre. And it even ends, the movie ends with that window. What was that about? And maybe I'm silly. I don't know. I accept it. Maybe I'm silly for wanting a resolution to that. But I personally, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I personally feel a little odd that we didn't get a follow up on that idea in this new movie, because it was so focused on in the previous film, and we just didn't get a follow up on it. And I would have liked to have seen one, because it was something that I liked. Now, in the long run, I do think it's also interesting to just, as fans, speculate, like, what was the window thing, and what do you think it represents, and what do you think it means? What do you think it was literally meaning? What do you think it was, meta meaning? But also, I'm disappointed. That's one of the things I'm disappointed about the new movie, is why didn't we get a follow up on that? I think that would have been pretty cool. You know what I mean? One of the other things that I really liked about this movie was the music. First of all, like the other two Halloween movies, but definitely more so in this one, the Halloween score, not the soundtrack, but the score was really well done. I really appreciated their version of the Halloween theme, and that it was similar but still different. And there are a lot of versions of the theme and a lot of twists on that soundtrack that I really, really liked throughout the movie. But then also the soundtrack of the movie was bomb. Like, it was so good. Again, definitely going to be different for a lot of people. I feel like it did feel very different for a Michael Myers film, but I liked it. Again, I was in these moments where I'm just like, what? This is a Halloween movie? What's going on? But I liked it, and I tried to kind of just go with it on the ride, and see where it was going, and I appreciated it. So here's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna say, again, we rank movies out of 20. If I was going to give this movie a ranking out of 20, again, just going to go with the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm going to give it an 18 out of 20. I really, really liked it. And if I was going to put it on the tier list, I don't, I feel like I can't. Again, I really liked the film. I loved this movie. I thought it was awesome. I'm very excited to see it again. But I would probably give it either a B or an A tier, instead of an S tier, just because, again, I personally wanted more Michael in the movie, and that is that is something that that's what I want from a Halloween movie. But with that being said, I think it's a great film beyond that, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. Definitely, I don't know, I feel like I enjoyed it more than 2018. So I have to make a decision. I suppose I will say that it gets a B tier for now. I really liked it. I'm trying to temper my reaction. I don't want to, be too hyperbolic. So I'm going to give it a B tier. B tier is still a really great grade. But I really liked it. I thought it was a great movie. But when I think about why I like watching the Halloween movies, it's because they feel like good Halloween movies. And the reason why I like Halloween 1 and Halloween 4, which is a Halloween movie that's really come to be one of my favorites. Halloween 3 is another one of my favorites, is because it's like the perfect movie to watch on Halloween night. There's something about the way Michael is as an entity and as a scare that works so well on Halloween, and then the cinematography and filming of Halloween night, and seeing the orange leaves roll down the street, and seeing scarecrows, all that stuff in those movies I love, and maybe I just didn't get that feeling as much from this movie. So that's kind of my ranking there. But with that out of the way, and with my recommendation there, let's get into some brief spoilers really quickly. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, this is the end of the video for you. So that's your warning. Let's talk about it. The reveal of someone else being kind of the killer in this film, I know is going to upset a lot of people. Obviously, it's going to upset a lot of people. It's funny because in 2018, they almost do this twist, right? Where Michael's new doctor puts on the mask for a second. And I remember watching a lot of reviews where people were like, I thought he was going to become Michael, and I'm so glad they didn't do that. And it's like they heard that and were like, well, let's do that. And I feel like it's attractive for a lot of filmmakers to be like, I want to do a Michael Myers film, where someone else wears the mask. So I understand why that's not appealing. And it does feel weird that some of the cooler kills in this movie aren't Michael. It's just this person. But that being said, again, I like the meta story of like evil being spread. I love that he gets grabbed by Michael in this little hole in the ground, and he lets him go. And then he asks Allison, he's like, did you get away, or did Michael let you go? And she's like, what? I really loved that. And this whole metaphor of, you have a cut and you have an option. It either heals or it gets infected. And part of that, while it is difficult to avoid infection, part of that is up to you, and it's your maintenance to make sure you heal properly. And I thought that was such a cool metaphor for, letting, evil fester inside of you, quote unquote, letting evil, quote, fester inside of you. I feel like the opening of the film where I think his name is Corey, accidentally kills this kid is meant to mirror Michael's opening of the original 1978 film where Michael kills his sister. And Michael killing his sister in the original is just this kind of senseless act of violence. How can a child, be so evil? And then Loomis is like, I tried to reach him, but there's nothing there. But this movie kind of introduces, like, this town sees Corey as the same thing to a large extent, is that he's just bad. And if you divorce him from the context, maybe he is just bad, but maybe there's context there that prevented people from seeing that he was a human underneath it. And this route to him becoming a version of Michael Myers and being a conduit for evil, largely, could have something to do with the way he's treated, but could also have something to do with the way he treats himself and the way he sees himself. And again, whether he let his trauma represented as a cut, whether he let that heal or get infected. I thought that was all so interesting and well done. But one of the big criticisms I have about the movie is I loved the team kills. I loved that he was bringing people back for Michael to kill, and I felt like that was a good marriaging of the ideas of having somebody new but not replacing Michael. And which is why, again, it was confusing that at the end he puts on the mask, and it was a cool moment and whatever. But like, I just feel like if they would have stayed in the realm of having him, bring people back for Michael to kill and having them do it together, I feel like people would have been more satisfied with the film. I really loved the idea of him and Michael killing together and him being this, the scarecrow or whatever the heck that mask was. I thought that was really, really fun. But I think part of the reason why they had him take the mask on was so people could like kind of cheer on the return of Michael, because otherwise you don't have a reason to cheer for Michael. You don't want Michael to win against Laurie, right? But you do kind of want Michael to win against someone who is, an imposter in his identity. And so I think that was the structural idea, is that, you could root for Michael to take out this kid, who's stealing his identity, instead of rooting for Michael against Laurie Strode. I think that was the idea, and it seems like it didn't work because a lot of people really didn't like that. So one of my favorite things just happened, even though I didn't do anything. For whatever reason, as I was talking, the recording just stopped, and so I lost a lot of my review of Halloween Ends. But I'm gonna try and reiterate what I said. I was close to the end anyway. Excuse me if I repeat myself here. I believe we are still in the spoiler section. But I understand why people dislike the movie in terms of what they got from it. Again, I also like seeing Michael Myers, and so I get it, but I appreciated that they were trying something new, especially because it was the 13th chapter in a 12 movie franchise. But I also really liked the idea of Michael and Corey teaming up together, and Michael being this lead and also being assisted by Corey because he is very limited in his age and because of his injuries, but also teaching Corey and Corey descending into darkness and, appreciating these lessons essentially. I felt like the movie, again, I don't want it to be too long, but I felt like the movie really would have benefited from more scenes of the two of them killing together. Not only is it a cool idea, but it's just a unique idea for the franchise, that I feel like I would have appreciated a little bit more from, because when it first happened, I was like, oh my goodness, like, you can kind of see someone else taking on the Michael Myers mask. I feel like that's a very... I feel like a lot of people would see that coming as like a twist, whether you like the twist or not, just like, oh, they tried to put somebody else in the mask. But somebody helping Michael as if like he's almost this animal and you're almost just like assisting. I really really loved that idea, and I loved that it was in the movie, but I wish it was in the movie a little bit more because I thought it was so cool. Some of the other things I wanted to say were that I really liked the Halloween Season of the Witch references in the movie. I liked like the opening credits and the logo. I felt like Halloween Kills referenced Season of the Witch a little bit less subtly than I would have liked, whereas 2018 did it a little bit more subtly. So I like seeing those references, but I like them to be a little bit more subtle. And I also really liked that Diana Prince was in the film. I was really stoked about that cameo. I couldn't believe it when I saw her. And of course, she's a big Season of the Witch fan. I really loved. Or that's part of the reason why I discovered her in the first place, was just seeing that there were Halloween Season of the Witch fans out there. And so to see her in a Halloween film was really, really cool, especially the third Halloween film in this trilogy was really, really cool. I almost didn't recognize her at first because she was a blonde, and I just am not familiar with her as a blonde as much, but I thought that was very, very cool. When it comes to the conclusion of Michael Myers at the end, when it comes to his death scene, I like the final fight between Michael and Jamie, but I do think it's a little odd that they basically parade him around on top of their car like a Christmas tree, and then put him into a meat grinder. You always have this question of like, what is going to happen to Michael to convince us that he's dead? It's like, oh, we've killed him in all these other ways. We've set him on fire. We cut off his head. We set him on fire again, but inside of my Home Alone house. You know what I mean? Like, he's died in so many different ways, and I get why they need to have a more definitive death, and I do like the idea of him being in a meat grinder. I just don't know if I'm a huge fan of the town getting together to execute him as a like community. There's something about that I don't necessarily love. I feel like I could be convinced to like it more. I think maybe they just needed to do more with the film to convince me to. There's just something I don't like about it. Obviously, Michael, they've tried so much, right? Like, he's not like just this random murderer. He is in this film and throughout the franchise, he is a serial killer who they've tried to get psychiatric help. They've tried to keep him locked away, and he consistently gets out and hurts not just like a couple people, but like mountains of people. So like, it is this trauma that they're healing from, and they're trying to let go of it. I get it, but at the same time, there's just something odd about it. And I do appreciate the movie, says like, this isn't how we do things, and they're like, we're doing it tonight. Like, I do appreciate that, but I just think they could have done a little bit more. I don't know what, but there was just something about that scene that I didn't love. That made me feel uncomfortable, of like a community just executing some dude to get together, that I feel like they could have done more to get me on their side a little bit. But I do love that Laurie Strode gets her happy ending in the end. I really do appreciate that. I also like her writing her book throughout the movie. I like what they did with Laurie in this film. Like, she was still badass Laurie. She was still, very capable, but also very, aware Laurie from 2018. It felt like a good. She felt like she really progressed from the first film in this trilogy, and I really liked that. And I like that she got her happy ending in the end. I liked that we left on a positive note for her. I really loved that we got a Don't Fear the Reaper at the end. When I was rewatching the Halloween movies recently for my tier list, I mentioned that to my partner, and I was just like, why didn't we get more... why is Sandman so associated with Michael Myers from the second movie? He, that song is in a couple of the other films, but not Don't Fear the Reaper. Like, that's such a classic song for the franchise. Why don't we hear that more? And so to hear that in Halloween Ends was so cool. I got so excited, and I loved that. And those are my thoughts on the movie. Again, so I recommend it. I really loved it. Again, I wish there was more Michael Myers, but at the end of the day, I appreciate that they did something different, and I liked what they did. I didn't just like it because it was different. You know what I mean? I guess I should make that clear. That's not why I liked the movie, is because it was different. It's that I was open to them doing something different because it was, so many films before it, and I liked the new thing that they did, and I thought that they did that new thing well. But that being said, this isn't going to be like, as favorite of a film as Season of the Witch or 1978, or more so 1978 or 4, because it doesn't have as much Michael in it. And I personally want more Michael in it, even though I liked the movie. So, I'm going to give it an 18 out of 20, and I'm going to give it a B tier on the Halloween scale. I am tempted to give it an A tier, but you know, I just watched it and there are things that I dislike about it, and I kind of want to hold myself back just a little bit. You know, we can come back to it. You know, I'm giving it a glowing recommendation. I really do love it, but I'm gonna give it a B tier for now. So those are my thoughts on Halloween Ends.
Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. As regular viewers know, I make a variety of content on my channel, and I'm always going to make the videos that I want to make. But if you see something you enjoy, make sure to let me know, and I'll try to prioritize that kind of content in the future. Over on Twitch, we've been celebrating Creepy Carrot Month Year 3, which essentially means we've been playing a bunch of horror video games, more specifically Resident Evil 7 and 8. We actually just finished playing Resident Evil 7 and 8, and now we're about to take on the Dead Space trilogy. Plus, occasionally we'll react to creepy YouTube videos, so if that sounds interesting to you at all, make sure to check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/carrotscraps. And all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are at carrotscraps as well. So I want to thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Halloween Ends came out on October 14th, 2022 from director who? Who is this director? Listen, guys, there's way too much stuff coming out right now. There's Scorn, Bayonetta 3, Halloween Ends, Hellraiser 22, Hulu Raiser, Gotham Knights, Mario plus Rabbids. There's too much stuff. Stop it. There's the Resident Evil DLC. Stop it. Stop it. I've had enough.